Welcome to Rock Solid IP, expert strategies for creating real value from your creativity and innovation.
Hello and welcome to Rock Solid IP, expert strategies for creating real value from creativity and innovation with Rob Wells from the Rock IP law firm. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and today's episode is going to be all about portfolio management. Hey, Rob, how are you?
Good, Kevin. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Looking forward to our conversation. Can you briefly explain your firm's role in IP portfolio management?
Sure, absolutely. So we'll do the same exact thing that most other law firms will do. We'll draft your patent applications, we'll file your trademark registrations, and we'll pay your maintenance fees. But Rock IP takes a different perspective. We take a business first approach to portfolio management. So from our perspective, that is a strategic approach, understanding what's important to your company, what your budgets are, what your goals are. And then from that standpoint, we'll help you try to figure out exactly what steps you should take to adequately protect your IP within your budgetary constraints.
And for those who might be unfamiliar, what exactly is an IP portfolio, and why is effective portfolio management kind of crucial for businesses today?
Yeah. So there's several different types of IP. Let's go through them real quick. So you've got your patents, and we've talked about those, whether they're utility patents or design patents. You've got trademarks, so that's going to protect your brand. You have trade secrets, so that's confidential information that's economically valuable, that is, that's not easily discoverable by others. And then you have copyrights. Copyrights are, tangible embodiments of creative material. So your drawings or your pictures or your, books or writings, articles, that kind of thing. So all of those go into your portfolio, into your IP portfolio. And that's true whether your portfolio is like formally organized and in a nice little pretty binder, or whether you just know that you happen to have it. They're all part of what we call your portfolio. And your IP portfolio is valuable for a lot of different reasons. I know we've talked about it in another episode, probably a couple of episodes, but Ocean Tomo did a study recently and found that of the S&P 500, 90%, over 90% of that company's value was in intangibles. So in these things we've just talked about, your patents, your copyrights, trademarks, trade secrets, over 90% of the company's value is there. So when you're thinking about trying to sell your company, or you're thinking about trying to protect what you've invested time, blood and sweat and tears into, and money, that's, it makes a lot of sense to make sure that you get protection. And then in addition to being able to protect yourself, you can create secondary streams of revenue from your intellectual property, whether that's through licensing or through litigation, or possibly by selling off one of your patents or trademarks, or anything along that line. You're also able to recoup funding and money from that and create an additional stream of revenue. So that's why it's important.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds important. There's some terminology I could use some clarification on. Can you explain the difference between a global or international IP portfolio and a local one, and why is this distinction important?
Yeah, so what you're asking about, I think, is just, we hear about people who are talking about like, well, their US portfolio or their local portfolio, as opposed to like their global portfolio. When we're looking at a US portfolio, we're simply talking about the assets that you have in the United States, without exception, whether it's patents, trademarks, copyrights, or or trade secret. All of those are protected on a country by country basis. So simply getting a patent here in the United States doesn't give you patent protection in any other foreign country. You actually have to get a patent in that country as well. And we can certainly help you try to figure out A, where you should be getting additional protection at, but B, also how to do it. And there are strategic ways to do it a little bit more cost effectively, and to only get coverage in the countries that actually matter. For an international portfolio, we're talking about your trademarks or your patents, et cetera, that are covered really in all of the different countries. But when we're talking about just, in the US, that's just what you have here locally.
So when it comes to portfolio management, companies might want to maybe do an audit every now and then just to sort of check in on what's going on. How often should businesses conduct an audit?
Yeah, so it makes a lot of sense to be running an audit. An audit in general is the process of kind of taking a look at what your intellectual property is and making strategic decisions based on that. So for example, in patents, you want to take a look at, okay, what patents do I own, as well as kind of, do my patents cover the products or services that I'm currently offering? If they no longer do, if you're kind of coming up with new developments, that might signal a need to file new patent applications. By contrast, you might also say, well, look, the patents that I've got, they're older. The technology isn't something we're using yet and are using anymore. And it's kind of gone by the wayside a little bit. And in that case, you can make a determination that says, maybe I'm not going to pay the renewal fees. I'm going to let it go ahead and expire. Or it may become something that you want to sell to another company, or at least to license to other companies. In terms of trademarks, you certainly want to be taking a look at whether all of your trademarks, all of the brands and marks that you're using to identify your company, but B, your products are covered, and whether you've got enough protection to get everything that you need and to protect your brand. And so that kind of combination, doing those types of audits is important. The other one is, I would say, a trade secret audit to evaluate and make a determination about whether you have trade secrets, confidential and economically valuable information that you should be protecting as a trade secret, and making sure that you're taking adequate steps to protect the confidentiality of it. In terms of frequency or how often you need to do it, I think it depends on what your company is selling, and that may increase or decrease the frequency with which you should be conducting audits. If you're a quick moving company and you're innovating rapidly, I would say take a look at your patents on a pretty regular basis, whether that's quarterly or annually. On the trade secret side, I would say it's probably not a bad idea to be running a trade secret audit every quarter, or maybe even more frequently than that.
And aside from audits, once a portfolio is established, what are the best practices for maintaining and managing it over time?
Yeah, so good management basically comes down to docketing and to docketing well. There are a slew of different docketing programs out there. They can be somewhat expensive, and they require attention. But this is where you would keep all of your intellectual property assets in a computer program that will identify some different dates for you, especially in the United States, but in almost all countries. There is a requirement that you pay renewal fees in order to keep your IP asset alive. So in terms of patents, for example, there's a renewal fee that has to be paid in order to maintain the validity of your patent at 3.5, 7.5, and 11.5 years. So at the 3, 7, and 11 year marks, basically, but in that 1.5 year gap. And if you choose not to file, or if you just forget to pay that renewal fee, you can lose your patent rights. Trademarks similarly have, renewal requirements. So in a trademark, you have to demonstrate every 5 to 6 years that you are continuing to use that mark. And then you simply need to go ahead and pay another fee again. And likewise, if you don't file the required paperwork, your asset can just go abandoned. So it's important to either use a firm like ours to go ahead and help you keep an eye on those things and make sure that we get those fees paid, or to invest in a docketing system yourself.
And you mentioned renewals, and how does that process work? And how can companies manage the deadlines for their patents, trademarks, and other IP assets?
Like we just talked about, in order to handle renewals, patents need to be renewed in the United States at 3.5, 7.5, and 11.5 years. So you would just make sure that you get those patent application, or get those patents, those renewal fees paid on time, and be proactive about it. Unfortunately or fortunately, like, the patent office doesn't badger you to make sure that you get those fees paid on time. They might send, one notice, but it's much better idea to have those docketed well, and to go ahead and pay those fees when you need to, and to do it proactively.
Yeah. The government's not going to keep sending you reminders to help you out, right?
Right.
If you have a well-managed IP portfolio, is that something that you found helps attract investors, or even enhance a business's valuation?
Yeah, it really does. In terms of startup companies that are looking for their Series A, or Series B, or even further on down the road, they'll certainly be trying to get a higher valuation on their company. Your IP assets, as your banker is taking a look at and trying to evaluate your company and put a value on your company, IP assets significantly raise the value of your company. Back in 2017, 2016, one of my very first startup clients, we filed their very first patent application for them, and they called us the next day, just ecstatic, saying, "Hey, we told them that we had you file a first patent application for us, and the very first non-provisional patent application we filed." And the banker said, "Really? Okay, that's fantastic." They literally doubled their valuation. They literally went from just north of a $1 million valuation to just north of a $2 million valuation, literally overnight. What that means is that startup company was able to actually get they were able to demand and get twice the funding that they would have been able to get. They now have twice as much runway that they can work with just by having spent a much more modest sum than that $1 million that they got, reflected in their valuation. Yeah, so that is truly important. It's valuable.
What advice would you give to a small business or startup that might be watching this that is looking to build and manage their first IP portfolio?
Yeah, so intellectual property can get overwhelming in terms of cost. So what I would say is, but it is important to maintain your intellectual property to get and protect the intellectual property you need. There are strategic ways that from the get-go you can pursue. I would say start small and be strategic about it. Protect your character mark, for example, for your company name, and possibly wait on the design mark, or possibly wait on getting different colors if on your mark. In terms of patents, pursue it from a provisional standpoint to begin with, and try to get as good a coverage as you possibly can, so that you have a little bit more time before you actually need to file that non-provisional patent application. And then choose the foreign countries that maybe you'll need to file in. Choose those strategically. Depending on your company and where you're selling your products, it might not make any sense at all to get foreign protection. In other circumstances, that might be incredibly important, but you can also make sure that you select the foreign countries where you want protection very carefully.
All right. Well, thanks for that, Rob. And thank you for tuning in to Rock Solid IP, expert strategies for creating real value from creativity and innovation with Rob Wells. To connect with Rob, you can head to rock-ip.com. And of course, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel and leave us a review in the comments. Rob, great to see you again. Thanks for all the tips.
Kevin, it's always a great time. Thanks.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.